Pilot reports mysterious disc-shaped object flying dangerously close to passenger jet near London Gatwick Airport. A commercial airline pilot has reported a startling encounter with a mysterious disc-shaped object while preparing to land at London Gatwick Airport, raising fresh questions about unexplained aerial sightings and aviation safety. Now the real investigation begins as we explore every side of this story on our AI podcast.
Imagine you're descending into London on a standard commercial Airbus jet. You're looking out the window, traveling at hundreds of miles an hour.
Right.
And then literally 100 feet outside your window, a dark-rimmed flying saucer streaks past in the exact opposite direction.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. No collision alarms sound in the cockpit. Air traffic control sees absolutely nothing on their screens.
Which is the craziest part to me.
Right. What happens when our multi-billion-dollar aviation safety net is completely breached by something that, well, officially doesn't even exist?
I mean, it really forces us to confront a pretty terrifying reality about the skies we fly in every single day. The systems we trust with our lives, they have these massive, invisible blind spots.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a stack of sources centered around a publicly released official report by the UK Air Prox Board.
Alongside a few accompanying aviation news excerpts, too.
Yes, exactly. And the mission of this deep dive is to look at the hard facts of a highly documented near miss between a commercial Airbus A319 and an unidentified disc.
A literal flying saucer.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I know the phrase flying saucer over London sounds like a pitch for a bad sci-fi movie.
Oh, absolutely.
But we are examining an official aviation safety investigation here. We're going to look at the mechanics of the encounter, how the authorities responded, and what this means for modern air travel.
Yeah, and to really understand the severity of this event, we have to look past the sensational nature of the object itself for a second.
Right, like put the UFO stuff on hold.
Exactly. We need to start with the geometry of the airspace, the actual physics of what was happening to that Airbus A319 in those moments.
So let's pull the flight data from the report. The Airbus was actively descending toward London Gatwick Airport in southern England.
Yep. Passing over the Sussex countryside.
Right, near a small village called Hangcross, about 7 miles south of Gatwick, I think. And the aircraft was in the middle of executing a planned left bank toward the runway.
And that detail is crucial. A banked turn in a commercial aircraft of that size. It's an operation governed entirely by inertia and aerodynamics.
It's not like turning a steering wheel in a Honda Civic.
Oh, not at all. When an Airbus banks left, the ailerons are altering the lift vectors on the wings. They are tilting this entire massive aircraft so that the lift physically pulls it through the turn.
Which means the pilots are incredibly busy, right?
Oh, their spatial awareness is maxed out. They're calculating airspeed. They're managing descent rates, anticipating the rollout to line up with the runway.
So it's this highly choreographed sequence.
Yeah, where unexpected variables are incredibly dangerous. You do not want surprises during a banked descent.
Well, an unexpected variable is kind of an understatement here. Right in the middle of this left bank, the object appears.
Right.
And the report specifically notes it was at the exact same altitude as the passenger jet, but flying in the opposite direction.
Same altitude, opposite direction. That is the nightmare scenario.
And it passed between just 100 and 300 feet from the plane's right wing.
Which is alarmingly close.
I mean, think about it like this. It's like two cars passing each other on a highway at 80 miles an hour, but with only millimeters of clearance between their mirrors.
That is a spot-on analogy.
Yeah.
Because passing within 100 to 300 feet fundamentally shatters the architecture of aviation safety.
Because they're supposed to have a massive bubble around them. Right.
Exactly. Air traffic control creates these invisible safety bubbles around every single commercial flight. In most controlled airspace, standard vertical separation is like 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet vertically, yeah.
And horizontal separation is measured in actual miles. So when an object breaches that monitored bubble and gets within 100 feet,
The whole system has already failed.
the structural integrity of the air traffic system has completely broken down at that point, yes.
I am just trying to visualize that closing speed, though. If both of these objects are traveling at high speeds in opposite directions, a distance of 100 feet it's practically non-existent.
The closing speed is the absolute critical factor. When an object approaches from the opposite direction at the same altitude, the combined velocity minimizes human reaction time to near zero.
It's just a blur.
Basically. But there is a biological limitation at play here, too. It's known in aviation as the looming effect.
Wait, the looming effect, what is that?
So human vision evolved to detect lateral motion, right? Like something moving across our field of view.
Like a predator running across a field.
Exactly. But when an object is coming directly at you head on, it doesn't move across your retina. It stays in the exact same spot in your vision.
Oh, wow. So it just looks stationary.
It barely changes size until the final fraction of a second when it rapidly expands or, looms.
That is terrifying. So a pilot looking out the windshield at something approaching head-on, they physically cannot perceive the danger until it's practically inside the cockpit.
Right. There is literally no time to process the image, input a command to the flight controls, wait for this heavy aircraft to alter its aerodynamic lift, and move out of the way.
Okay, but because they were sharing that exact same altitude, the pilot wasn't just looking at a blip on a radar screen. They were looking straight out the windshield.
They had a front row seat.
At 100 feet away, they got a terrifyingly clear look at it. So what exactly did they see?
Well, the official report captures the crew's visual description, and I have to say, the terminology they used is highly unconventional for a stuffy government safety document.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the pilot specifically described it as a, quote, disc or flying saucer type.
A flying saucer in an official UK Airprox report.
The report notes it had a distinctive circular shape, and it featured darker markings around its outer rim.
And the crew explicitly noted it did not look like any conventional aircraft.
Now, to be fair, the investigators did write that the crew suspected it might be an advanced or unusual drone, but they admitted they couldn't identify it with any certainty.
Right, the drone theory always comes up.
And I'm really struggling with this drone label.
Yeah.
I mean, commercial pilots stare at the sky for a living.
That is their entire job, yeah.
They know what military jets look like, they know weather balloons, and they certainly know what a civilian quadcopter looks like.
Oh, absolutely.
So why would a highly trained professional use a culturally loaded term like flying saucer with dark rim markings if they just saw someone's DJI drone? Is suspected drone just a bureaucratic safety blanket for, I have absolutely no idea what I just saw?
I mean, you are hitting right on the tension between human observation and bureaucratic language there. A pilot's visual lexicon is drilled into them from day one of flight school.
They're trained to spot specific things.
Exactly. They rapid identify airborne hazards by looking for recognizable features. Wings that generate lift, a tail section for stability.
Or a visible propulsion system like jet exhaust or rotors.
Right. So when a flight crew reports a shape that lacks all of those conventional aerodynamic control surfaces, investigators have to take that seriously, even if the default assumption leans heavily toward drone technology.
Because how is a perfectly circular disk maintaining its altitude? How is it propelling itself?
Exactly. But investigators have to categorize these anomalies to process them through the safety system. So drone is the most statistically probable box to check for an unidentified airspace breach.
Even if it doesn't fit the description at all.
Yeah. But honestly, the pilot's admission that they could not identify it with certainty is actually a huge mark of their reliability as an observer.
How so?
Because they didn't jump to wild conclusions on the official form. They didn't say it was an alien spacecraft. They simply recorded the raw data their eyes registered. A disk with dark edges, moving fast, defying conventional aerodynamics.
Okay, but if the pilot's eyes, what they call it in aviation slang, the MK1 eyeball?
An MK1 eyeball, yep.
Right. If that was the only thing that worked, why didn't the multi-million-dollar ground system see it?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because you would expect an object passing that close to a commercial jet to trigger massive radar tracking and screaming alarms in air traffic control, right? But the reality of what happened next just highlights a glaring blind spot.
The total lack of digital response is probably the most concerning revelation in the entire Airprox board's findings.
Well, before we look at the radar failure, let's look at the immediate aftermath in the cockpit. Because the pilot did not actually perform any emergency evasive maneuvers.
Which is wild to think about.
But not because they didn't want to. It was because the Airbus was already banking in that planned left turn toward Gatwick.
Right. That routine maneuver physically carried the plane's flight path away from the object.
It was pure geometric luck.
Total luck. The aerodynamic inertia of that left bank is the only reason this didn't end in a catastrophic midair collision.
If they had been flying straight and level for even one more second,
the flight path vectors would have intersected. It would have been a disaster.
Unbelievable. So the adrenaline's pumping, the plane eventually lands safely, And the UK Airprox Board, which is an independent organization that examines near misses in UK airspace, they launched an investigation.
And air traffic controllers issued a warning afterward to other planes in the sector.
But here is the crazy part. The investigators found zero confirmed radar identification of this object.
Nothing at all.
Nothing on the screens. And on top of that, no other pilots in the vicinity reported seeing it.
So no additional eyewitness accounts.
So what does this all mean? I mean, it's like a deer darting across a dark highway, but your dash cam is broken and there were no other cars around. You know what you saw, but the authorities can't do anything with a ghost.
That's a great way to put it. To understand why air traffic control saw nothing, we have to look at how the aviation monitoring system actually functions.
Okay, break it down for us.
It relies on overlapping layers of technology, primarily primary radar and secondary surveillance radar.
So how does primary radar work?
Primary radar works by emitting massive pulses of electromagnetic radio waves. It waits for them to bounce off an object and return to the dish.
Like a bat using echolocation.
Exactly like that. But it relies on an object having a large radar cross-section, meaning it needs to be made of a substantial amount of metal to actually reflect that wave back.
Okay, and what about secondary radar?
Secondary radar relies on transponders. Commercial planes and most private aircraft carry a digital transponder that actively shakes hands with the ground station.
So it's broadcasting its own location.
Yep. Pinging back its altitude, speed, identity, all of that.
But this object defeated both of those systems.
Yeah.
It's like having the world's most advanced firewall to protect a server from known internet viruses.
Right.
But this object was a malicious USB drive physically plugged into the side of the machine. The digital security system never even saw it coming because it just wasn't looking for that kind of threat.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. If an object is relatively small or made of advanced composite materials like carbon fiber or dense plastics, the primary radar waves will simply scatter or pass right through it.
And return absolutely no signal to the dish.
Exactly. And if it isn't broadcasting a transponder ping either, it is practically invisible to the entire air traffic control network.
Which is terrifying for the investigators, right? Because they rely on that data.
The Airprox board is entirely data-driven. Their methodology relies on triangulating radar tracks, transponder data, and multiple eyewitness accounts. When you completely remove the digital data, their system just breaks down.
And that leads directly to the board's final conclusion in the report. They officially stated that the identity of the object remains unknown.
Unsolved.
They said the reported altitude and visual description provided insufficient evidence to determine its nature. But the line that is truly staggering to me is their conclusion on the danger level.
Oh, the paradox.
Yes. The board officially ruled that safety margins were reduced, but no actual risk of collision was found.
Right. Reduced safety margin, but no collision risk. It's a total paradox, and it's a byproduct of how investigators mathematically calculate risk after an event has concluded.
I just don't understand how they can separate the two. If the safety margin was completely shattered by a flying disc 100 feet away, how is there no risk of collision?
Because the Airprox board analyzes the event based on mathematical flight path vectors.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning, since the Airbus was already turning away when the object was spotted, the investigators lay those two trajectories over each other on a map.
Oh, I see.
And they conclude that the paths did not mathematically intersect at the exact same millisecond in space. Because the event was over before anyone could even react, and the geometry naturally pulled the plane away, they conclude no collision risk existed.
But the safety margin was violated.
Severely violated. The theoretical bubble of empty space that ensures pilots actually have time to react if paths do intersect, that was totally breached.
It's like arguing that someone firing a bullet past your ear didn't pose a risk because you were already turning your head anyway.
Exactly.
It might be mathematically true after the fact, but it totally fails to capture the immense danger of the situation in that moment.
It reveals a major limitation of a purely retrospective, data-driven analysis. It measures the math of what happened perfectly, but it struggles to quantify the sheer dumb luck involved in avoiding disaster.
Which brings us to the broader implications of this report, because this isn't just an isolated X-Files mystery.
No, not at all.
The Airprox board officially highlighted that this encounter represents a tangible, growing hazard. The skies near busy airport corridors are seeing a surge in unidentified objects and possible drone activity.
It's a huge problem right now.
So whether the object over Sussex was an advanced drone, some unusual aerial device, or a complete unknown, It remains an unsolved aviation mystery.
And an unsolved mystery in aviation isn't just a cool story to tell at a bar, it is a hazard that hasn't been mitigated.
Right.
The aviation industry is built entirely on a proactive safety culture. When a flaw in an engine is discovered or a software glitch in a flight computer pops up, the entire global fleet is analyzed and the risk is mitigated.
But you cannot mitigate a threat that you cannot identify, track, or even understand. And this connects directly to you, the listener. If you're flying out of a major hub tomorrow, this affects you.
Absolutely it does.
We are entering an era of what you call asymmetrical airspace threats. If this really was just an advanced drone, are we entering an era where anyone's untracked gadget can play a game of chicken with a commercial jet? Have our gadgets outpaced our aviation safety nets?
The short answer is yes. The safety model is being inverted right before our eyes. You have a multi-million-dollar aircraft carrying hundreds of lives, adhering to incredibly strict international regulations.
And it's suddenly forced to share airspace with objects that play by no rules at all.
Exactly. The aviation industry is desperately trying to grapple with this new frontier of invisible threats. How do you monitor the unmonitorable?
Right, like do airports need to install specialized anti-drone radar domes?
Maybe. Or do we need to mandate optical sensors on the noses of commercial jets to automatically detect non-transponding objects?
Because right now, the safety of a flight descending into a major hub relies entirely on a pilot happening to look out the window at the exact right millisecond.
And as we saw in the Sussex encounter, seeing it doesn't even matter if the closing distance is that fast, the human reaction time is completely negated.
It's just staggering. Let's briefly recap the reality of what we've unpacked today. We have a heavy commercial Airbus A319 loaded with passengers dropping into a banked turn. A dark-rimmed, disc-shaped object streaks past in the opposite direction at the exact same altitude, mere hundreds of feet away.
Defeating all radar systems.
Yes, evades all primary and secondary radar. It is officially documented by a highly credible flight crew, investigated by the highest safety authority in the UK, and left completely officially unsolved.
You know, as we wrap up this analysis, there is one final angle to this report that I think really deserves our attention, and it has nothing to do with aerodynamics or radar physics.
Oh, what is it?
It's the psychology of the reporting pilot.
Ah, the human element of the aftermath.
Consider the immense historical stigma surrounding UFO sightings. I mean, the ridicule is legendary. Now compare that to the incredibly rigorous, data-driven, highly professional culture of commercial aviation.
Right, a commercial pilot's entire career is built on their reputation for reliability, level-headedness, and just sound judgment.
So filing a report that specifically uses the words flying saucer in a government document
is basically putting a massive target on your own back.
Precisely. The pilot had to know the kind of intense scrutiny, bureaucratic friction, and potential peer ridicule that specific phrase would invite.
Yeah, you'd think they would just keep quiet.
It takes a massive amount of professional courage to sit down after a harrowing near miss, fill out an official AirProx form, and flat out refuse to dilute what you saw just to make the paperwork easier.
That is a really profound point.
And it raises a deeply unsettling question for us to mull over. If this one pilot was brave enough to risk their reputation to officially report a dark-rimmed disc, how many other commercial crews are encountering similarly bizarre, highly dangerous objects near our airports?
And just choosing to stay completely silent.
Exactly. Opting to avoid the questioning and the stigma, leaving these asymmetrical threats completely undocumented.
How many near misses are just vanishing into the ether because nobody wants to sound crazy?
It's a huge unknown.
That is a chilling thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the AirProx board's findings. It's a stark reminder that despite all our advanced technology, the skies are still harboring dangers that slip right through our safety nets. So keep your eyes on the skies during your next flight, because you never know what might be flying just outside your window.
Okay, one question for you. What do you think the pilot actually saw near London Gatwick Airport? Could it have been an advanced drone, an optical illusion, an unknown aircraft, or something that aviation experts have yet to identify? Share your theory in the comment. Thanks.